Hi, and welcome to This Is Ibrox. My name's Tommy McIntyre, the managing editor of the podcast, and my thanks to you, the listeners or watchers, wherever you happen to be. Thank you very much for giving us your time. Also, thanks to my very, very special guest who's joining us today, co-founder of ESR, Rangers investor, and probably more importantly, Rangers fan, Stuart Gibson. Stuart, thanks very much for joining me.
Very welcome. It's taken a while, but we made it work.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but I feel like I've been talking to you for a very, very long time over email. But listen, I know you're a very, very busy man. Not only your Rangers, work, but also you've got a large business portfolio in Asia as well. We might touch on that in terms of your journey as you went out there. But yeah, listen, thanks for making the time now that you're here in Glasgow as well. A small matter of a cup final coming up at some point. But I wanted to jump in and give people watching, listening, the fans, a little bit of background about you. I mean, obviously from Scotland, from Paisley, I believe.
Paisley, yeah.
And you travelled out to, I think it was Australia, I'm thinking 87?
87, yep. It was the day of the Scottish... No, it was the day of... There was a cup final. It was the 25th of October 1987. Because I remember we took off from Glasgow, landed in London, and I was asking a pilot what the score was. I think it was Rangers and Aberdeen that day. If memory serves me right, it's going back 30 odd years, it was 2-0 to Rangers.
You're testing my memory there. I'm trying to think, but no doubt somebody in the comments, one of our listeners or watchers, will definitely pull that one out the bag. But if I draw back a little bit before the big move, because I'd love to talk to you about that. But growing up, I think you had a grandmother that lived in Broomlin Road.
Yeah, she was Broomlin Road, then she moved across the road to the High Flats.
Okay.
I think it was Broomlin Court.
I think it was.
I'm sad to see they've gone.
I saw those new builds there. I've got
But both the old building at Broomlin Road and the High Flats, they've all gone.
It's all been levelled.
No trace
Different place. What does that feel like when you come back to the stadium now and you see that?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because my mum was born in Cornwall Street. It's just a bit further down the Paisley Road West. So as a kid, you're always in that area. You're always in the Ibrox area. Going from an aunt's house. And one of my aunts was in Copeland Road. Then you go into a granny's house. She was in Broomlin Court. So as a kid, being a Paisley lad, but I just seemed to spend an inordinate amount of time in Ibrox. Not directly, in the stadium, but it was always Ibrox and the old Albion training centre. We looked down in it from my granny's high flat.
All right.
So some weekdays, if for whatever reason I wasn't at school, I got to my granny's on my bike, which is a big trip coming from Paisley. And you just look down at the Albion and just watch the players. Oh, there's Davy Cooper, there's Sandy Jardine, there's Tam Forsyth, Tommy McLean. It was magic just standing at the balcony watching all these guys.
Great names. I think with modern football now, we're doing that'd be commercialised. You pay for a ticket to go and see that type of thing. But those types of memories then, so I suppose I should ask you, who was your hero growing up?
I think my first full Rangers team would probably have been either Kennedy or McCloy, then probably Sandy Jardine. There were a couple of gaps, but then there would be John Gregg, Bomber Jackson, Alec McDonald, Tommy McLean, Bobby Russell, Derek Johnston, probably Gordon Smith. I think that was the first. I missed one of them out there. But I think that was my first 11 Rangers team. And then you get through different iterations of teams. And then you would get Ali McCoy's coming in. Then there'd be Davy Cooper. And then the last team that was there before I left to go on my travels, it was the Souness era. It was just the start of that era.
Yeah.
So then suddenly you'd all these English international players coming in. And I was like, wow, how did we manage to get these guys up to Glasgow? These are seasoned Terry Butcher and all these guys and, Ray Wilkins. So that was the last Rangers team when I lived in the UK. But I mean, I think I went through 3 teams that I've got intimate knowledge of. That's
pretty big, especially that revolution at the end as well, because you've got Souness coming in, and then you've got the boardroom changed as well, with Lawrence Marlborough, etc. I was going to say there that how did we get all those English players up? That's exactly how I felt about you joining the podcast and saying yes, that I managed to get you on board now. But so fast forward then, so you make the decision to go, I think it was Australia you chose.
I was always destined to leave Scotland. I mean, got a lot of family that moved to Canada.
Okay.
Way back in the 50s and 60s. So as a kid, from the ages of 5 through to 15 and 16, every other year I was in Toronto. So I always thought I'd live in Canada. I just thought, okay, that's where a Scots migrants, we either end up in Canada, New Zealand or Australia. And funnily enough, when I'd finished college and I applied for a 1-year work permit, Canada rejected me. So then I thought, all right, where else could I go? So somebody told me about the Australian Boys Club. It was a movement whereby you could apply for a 1-year work permit to Australia.
Okay.
And you could get to use their health service, and there was reciprocity as well. So Australian kids could get the same benefits in the UK. And it was quite easy. If you're under 26, they're quite easy Aussie in terms of the way they'd hand out the visa. So did that for a year. I thought I'll work in bars and just kind of drift around the country having a look. But then the year just went a flash. I never get near a bar. I ended up working in the desert as a civil engineer for a full year. And suddenly your visa's up and it's like, I never really did what I wanted to do. So I got a 1-year extension, moved to Sydney, because I was actually in the desert for that full year, wasn't an exaggeration. Moved to Sydney, and then, just things fell into place. Just landed there, didn't know anybody. You just look at the classifieds, the newspapers before the internet, Person wanted to share an apartment. Okay, right, phone them up, go and look at the apartment, make sure they're not lunatics. Moved into an apartment sharing with 2 girls. And then I got a job. Again, it was classifieds, project manager wanted. But then, getting through the second year of my work permit, I just felt so far away from home. But it's kind of like Britain on the beach. You're hanging about pubs, whether it's a Rangers pub or a Celtic pub. This is in Sydney. And all your pals talk about is the football back home. So for me, you're so far away, but really it feels as if you never left. So it was never, for me, the idea had always been, since a very, very young child, Asia. That's where I always thought my destiny lay. But Australia just wasn't Asian enough. So I ended up getting a job with a big Japanese contractor who were building a highway in Bangkok. So at the age of 23, the second part of my Asian odyssey was moving to Bangkok. So but then I moved to Bangkok and I was in Bangkok for about 3 or 4 years. Long enough to learn a fair bit of the language and just to feel that this is really more the Asia that I was looking for. And then you just got on you get on the old expat treadmill. You do a contract in Bangkok, you do a contract in Hong Kong, you do a contract in Singapore, you do a contract in Sri Lanka. And by that time, I'd just been away for so long from the UK, that is. And then, I just felt that you're just chasing contracts all the time. Wanted something with a bit more of a career. It's good when you're in your 20s, just a couple of years here, a couple of years there. But it's more of a career move I was after. So I joined this large US developer. I think they're the world's largest warehouse owner and developer. So I joined them. They sent me to Japan to run their business. And then I thought, when I arrived in Japan, I thought, yeah, this feels like my home. As alien as Japan was, I couldn't speak any of the language back then.
When is this, date-wise?
This was this is 2000, okay. 22 years ago, 23 years ago. So I landed in Tokyo. This company sent me out there. This was an American company. And their idea was, well, you've been in Asia most of your life, so you know Japan well. For them, Asia was just Asia. Despite the fact I didn't speak Japanese, never been to Japan before, but I knew Asia. But it worked out very well. And after 3 years, I had a notion about setting up my own business. So I quit, and I did. I mean, it's a long, detailed story to figure out how I kind of got from there to where we are today. But I mean, it was having an idea. It was having confidence and conviction. And it was basically having the balls to go and ask someone to lend you a lot of money. And that's what I did. I borrowed a lot of money from a joint venture partner. And 3 years later, the company was making profit. And that partner bought me out. And basically, the buyout proceeds were enough for me to really, really start on my own. And that got me started with a company that I'd formed called Redwood. The company I had before that was called Black Pine, Kurumatsu in Japanese. Black pine is the smallest tree in the world. You know, little bonsai trees.
Okay. I'm starting to draw the in redwood. Okay.
So that company went very, very well. The 3 years, actually the 4 years of its life, it did really, really well. So, I'd sold it and we got a chunk of money for it, and it was enough to capitalise a new company that I could control. So it was really one of these pub conversations, right? What do we call a new company, right? The last company was the smallest tree in the world. What's the biggest tree in the world? Sequoia. Checking the internet. Someone's already, there's a company called Sequoia, right? But what is a Sequoia? Oh, it's a redwood. So we'll just call the company Redwood. So the smallest tree in the world to the biggest tree in the world. I mean, it was as simple as that.
And was the control element the important part? You wanted to forge your own path for the organisation?
Yeah, because before it was a joint venture with the partner that lent me the money to start the business. So he get paid off, he was happy. And he ended up buying that company in Japan. But with the proceeds of my share, I could basically carve my own path. So we did that. And, it went really, really well. It went very well. And then it was doing the same sort of business I was doing. It was simplification again. Buy land, design a big warehouse, rent it out to Amazon.com or DHL or FedEx or JD.com or Alibaba or any of these companies. So you now find that in Asia Pacific, if you get a parcel delivered to your home from Amazon, Rakuten, Alibaba, JD, it probably comes from one of my warehouses. I think these days we'll get about 500 of them all over Asia Pacific. So, I mean, I've kind of fast-forwarded quite a bit there, but that's how the business started. Yeah. Building these giant warehouses. Then we moved into energy. We moved into adjacent businesses, so from distribution centres that hold your Amazon products. Then we moved into data centres, so you're actually storing bits of information. But these data centres, they're very, very energy greedy. So you have to solve for, well, how do you get so much power into these giant data centres? So we started an energy company just to serve as a data centre business. And then suddenly you start in warehouses, then you start in data centres, then you need energy for data. So you start an energy business, and then you start a cold storage business, and then you just end up buying other companies all around you. Huh? So it just kind of took off and it snowballed, and it is where it is.
It is where it is. I think that's a fair point. But I suppose if I pick inside some of that, and I think it's interesting to hear you talk about some of that drive and the passion and the betting on yourself, which is fundamental to being able to push for those types of questions and that large amount of money, etc. You spent some time, I think, in Sri Lanka during Civil War as well.
That's right, yeah.
I'm interested in terms of on the ground, middle of a civil war, trying to get a job done. Is that something you reflect on?
Yeah. When people tell me that, times are hard and they think their job's crappy, and are not very, very happy with their work conditions or whatever, I just sometimes remind people when I lived in Sri Lanka, you were lucky to get a week without curfews. Suicide bombing was pretty much invented by the LTTE, which is the Tamil Tigers that became known. And it was predominantly women that would go onto buses and just detonate themselves. So, I mean, I think there was probably 2 incidents where I came very, very close to being in a life-threatening situation. One was right next to a bombing. It went off and it basically blew the back of the car out. And I was in a car with the driver. We were next to a bus to get bombed. Another time I was up north, and the army were waiting to ambush the Tamil Tigers. The Tamil Tigers had planted some arms in the jungle. It just so happened that my villa was in the jungle, and the army didn't know anybody actually used that villa. In fact, so the army set up the little sandbag encampment there, and they attacked the Tamil Tigers. So the Tamil Tigers started shooting back, but they were actually shooting back, and the bullets were going through my windows right above my head when I was lying in bed. Jeez. So I had to flip on my belly, and I was lying under the bed on my stomach looking at my girlfriend. I had an English girlfriend at the time, and we kind of slithered like 2 snakes to the back of the bungalow and kind of crawled on our stomachs out the door. Bullets were just taking chunks of bricks out the wall. Wow. And we ended up somehow I had the presence of mind to grab the car keys. I don't know, we just left everything else, but literally in my shorts, I grabbed the car keys and we sneaked out the back. We ran about half a kilometre to the car park and we drove 6 hours back to Colombo at night.
In our underwear. I'm sensing that the villa get put on the market very, very quickly after that.
I think it got destroyed in the tsunami in 2000. And there was a tsunami around about 2008 or something like that, the big Indonesia one. I think it went after that. I never went back there anyway.
And that was you?
Yeah, that was me. I was done.
And going.
And that's what precipitated the career change. That's when I got that move to Japan. I decided I'd had enough of emerging Asia or Mad Asia. And that's when I get the job with that large American developer. They sent me to Japan, so that kept me away from all the hairy places.
Well, I think that's an interesting story. So, okay, we press the fast forward button a little bit and we get to ESR in a good position. The IPO's coming up. I'm really interested in what the approach was in terms of not just on the ground conversations about Rangers, but yes, you've got a boyhood affection for it. You've been in Asia for, so much of your life now. Yep. You're naturalised out there, one would think. It doesn't fit your business portfolio, apart from the emotional attachment.
That's it, yeah.
How did that work for you?
Yeah, so we engaged Morgan Stanley to lead the IPO process. So I think we ended up, when we did the roadshow for the IPO, we started in Asia, went through Europe, ended up in North America, ended up in Wall Street. So with I remember we had 154 meetings over, I think it was like 15 or 16 days. We had George Taylor from Morgan Stanley. George had been associated with the club for a long time. I think he was one of the 3 bears that came in and put a rescue package together. So George was doing IPO, and George is a smart guy. He could see that the IPO was doing well. So I think we were actually at the celebration party for the IPO, and he got me at a moment of weakness.
Yeah, I was going to say the IPO did very, very well.
It did very, very well. He got me at one of these moments of probably euphoria and giddiness that you actually got it done. And then he put the hard word on it. He said, you could done a bit of Rangers, you could actually be involved with the club. So that's how it started. And then I made a promise to invest a certain amount. But then there was a bit of a shock on the market, literally about 3 months later. So I delayed it, but I put a small amount in just to, as a token of intent. And then the things kind of smoothed out in the capital markets, and I did fulfill the promise that I gave them. Over the last 2 or 3 years, I've been putting in a bit every year or so. Okay. So I think my ownership is about 10% or something like that these days, slightly above 10%.
Yeah, third largest owner. Outright, we'll come back to that at some point in time as well. So, I mean, that's a truncated version of that conversation, obviously. But given you've mentioned some of those things that have driven you, the control, own destiny, that type of thing, I do want to revisit. That does seem like a departure where you are hands off, handing over money. I suppose I'm just trying to get an equilibrium between the man I'm speaking to and the history there, and the fact that you're handing over your money and the control to the board because you weren't on a day-to-day basis in decision making. Yeah.
I took a few trips to Glasgow to get to meet the board. I'm pretty intuitive when I meet people. I form an impression very quickly, and I'd say 90% of the time I'm right on it. I met them all. I liked them all. Very, very different people, different characters on that board. But I think the purest intentions are, to take care of Rangers and make sure that we never see any of the nonsense that happened in the last 12 years. We never see that again at Ibrox. So these guys are devoted, they're passionate, and their intentions are very, very pure. So once I realised that, I was content that these guys would take care of my money, but more importantly, they take care of the club's interests. So I could trust them, I could rely on them. There's no point in me joining the board. I wasn't asked for a start. Wasn't ready. I was kind of busy. I'm still fairly busy. And I just thought I'd just be an observer for a few years, see how they operate. Yeah, and maybe if I feel I've got something to offer in the future, maybe I'll put my hand up. Maybe they'll ask me, maybe they won't.
Okay, I think that's a fair point in terms of this is what the initial investment and that ongoing drip investment looked like, and there's no need to revisit the numbers specifically. They're well known in the public domain anyway. But now you have been part of the club. You've seen people come and go. Some of that's been smooth transition, some hasn't. Before we get into all that, though, you mentioned that they are, and I don't want to spend too much time speaking about it, but as a dispassionate, maybe not so much dispassionate actually, but fairly dispassionate viewer from abroad during the trouble that we saw with administration, etc. When you reflect on the governing body, how the club reacted, what's your feelings as you look back?
Even today, I still can't believe it all happened. It seems like a horrible dream. Like, did that really happen? Did the rest of Scottish football self-harm just to teach us a lesson? Because they really did self-harm. The only people that benefited were the lower leagues of the Scottish Football Association. I mean, the Premier League shot themselves in the foot. Yep. Sporting integrity. I mean, my God, I get sick hearing that expression. No, it's just, it's still quite raw.
I'm getting that feeling.
All the blue nose, just myself, it's still quite raw.
Oh, listen, I'm right in there next to you on that particular point, and I agree in terms of factionalism over future-proofing the game. But we know where we are sometimes. Yep. Actually, just coming off that, you've come into the club then, so we park that up. But you've come into the club. Do you still see that in terms of you've engaged, you've seen the way that the media, the fan media landscape has grown up as well? We might touch on that. The governing body, other clubs, etc. As Rangers have been resurgent, they've won a title, they've winning cups, been back in Europe. Have you seen a little bit of tightness with other clubs? Do you interact with them regularly?
Not really. I mean, I'm in the director's box whenever I can, whenever I'm through for games, and you're around the directors from the other teams. You don't really socialise with them, I mean, everybody it's kind of strained friendliness. So there's not even chit chat. They're in their corner, we're in our corner, and we'll all smile at each other with these, kind of cheesy grins. But you don't really get into it. No. At least I don't. I mean, maybe Stuart Robertson, some of the other guys do have these relationships because they're there every day. But I never sensed that there's any great camaraderie or affiliation or even just goodwill with the rest of the clubs. I just don't sense that at all, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that, particularly the goodwill part. I think some of that is born out of the previous conversation we're having. Actually, just touching on Stewart because you benched him there. Now, Rangers have, produced some good results. I think the accounts last year, record turnover and 86 odd million, operating profit nearly 6 as well. Back in Europe, having won a title and then relinquished it, we won't dwell on that last part too much. But Stuart gets a lot of negative press sometimes, and I do wonder, from your perspective as an investor, you're looking at how your capital's being spent, how the club's being run. Do you, one, what's your view? And two, do you think there's a misunderstanding about what Stuart's in there to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a scarcity of engagement between the club and fans. I've noticed recently that John Bennett he's trying to correct that. But I think it's been, whether it's deserved or not, I think there's been quite a lot of criticism or noise about the fact that sometimes Stuart doesn't defend us in the press vociferously, when allegations or accusations come out about the club. When I look at Stuart, I look at the other senior management there. You get Ross, you get James Bisgrove. I think these three guys got a lot of undeserved flack, to be quite honest. Ross Wilson's doing a brilliant job. I mean, just look at, he doesn't have ample resources to work with. But, he's knocked it out of the park with Bassey and Joe Aribo. I mean, they're massive home runs for the club. There's some signings that we've made last summer, which we've been unlucky with injuries, and some of these players have yet to make their mark and get to know the fans. But I think Ross Wilson's done an excellent job, and he continues to do so. So I know that in the dying days of Gio's managerial reign with Rangers, he was getting a lot of flack, and I thought it was extremely unfair. You know, and the same for James Bisgrove as well. You remember all the nonsense about the Rangers-Celtic game in Sydney Cup?
I do recall some stories about that, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the way I see it, James Bisgrove's mandate is to just explore as much commercial opportunity for Rangers as he can, in whatever way he can. To me, the whole episode about the Sydney Cup, if we won the league, if we didn't relinquish the league, I'd have been happy to go to Sydney and take £3 million just for the pleasure of getting out there and get a chance to gub Celtic. But we didn't win the league, so we never went because other people were in breach of their contractual conditions. So the way I see it was, James played a blinder. He got a free option. He got the free option just to look and see what happens to the league. You know, we never won the championship. And some other people, never stood behind the contractual obligations. So that was your get out. So it was a free option. You know, in my own business, I'm always looking for free options because it gives me the time to get the right information to make the right commercial decision. That's what James did. But the flack that he was getting, especially from Club 1872, I think was just absolute nonsense. So I think we'll get senior management there, that are very much undervalued and underappreciated. Stewart, Ross and James, certainly they're the ones that come first and foremost.
Yeah. And I'll ask you then, because you mentioned them as well, and we can talk about the engagement, some of the problems the club has had with engagement with fans, with fan media, some of the misunderstanding, I think, between both parties, if you like, and some of the negativity that's grown up round about that. But let me ask, again, because you mentioned them, the relationship with Club 1872. So from an outside perspective, I'm not a member of Club 1872. I'm all for fan ownership. I don't sit on the Rangers board, I believe, but I'm happy to confirm that. That relationship seems completely and utterly broken down. And what's your view on, could it be repaired, or is it?
I don't know, because I was contacted by Club 1872. It was in the 2021 season. So I was trying to play the role of peace broker because I wasn't on the board, but I'm talking to the board. So I did give undertakings to Club 1872 that I'll arrange meetings with you and the board, but let's wait till the end of the season. Let's just keep the volume down during the season and during the summer. I'll make that happen. And then George Taylor joined the board. So he joined the board last year. So basically I said to George, look, would you mind speaking to Club 1872? I'm trying to get them together with some of the board members just so they can have an open dialogue and just try to try to repair that relationship, at least put it on a kind of amicable level. And George did take over the conversations, and there was some dialogue there, but no one came back to me from Club 1872. George didn't come back to me, so I assumed that they started talking. I don't think anything was repaired or anything is fine, but I just said I'd play the role of peacemaker and just bring the parties together. And I think I did to a certain extent. So whether I can come out of that, I'm not really sure. But I think Club 1872 have their own troubles. Beyond their engagement with Rangers FC, I think they'll get their own internal troubles as well going on right now. So I think it's just a lot of noise around the whole Club 1872 scene right now. So I haven't been in touch with them at all for the last probably 6-7 months.
Do you think, in terms of reshaping that landscape then, that people either need to try something different, or is there a way to maybe rehabilitate that relationship? Now, I appreciate you've not been part of those conversations the last 6-7 months, but again, standing on the slightly outside with one foot maybe towards the club, is it repairable, or is this let's try and start something different?
Yeah, I don't think it's repairable. I think it's very, very sad when you've got a fan, you've got a supporters base, and you've got a club, and they can't really talk to each other, and they do through the media, and the media just loves that because they're just going to put their own spin on it anyway. So I think there's maybe a lot of mistrust that's been built up on both sides. So, as an outside observer, I just don't think that trust will be rebuilt. As I tried to make it happen with George, one of the Club 1872 members. I don't know what came of it, because George said, "That's fine, I'll take over, I'll meet them." But I sense there's a lot of mistrust there, and again, just intuitively, I don't think that can be repaired. You would like to think it would be repaired, because ultimately we're only there because, we support a club that we all love. We all love the same thing. You'd think we'd be able to sit around a table, at least we've got some common understanding between us. That's the foundation that we can start from. Somehow, we're just gone beyond it. We can't even get to a table. So I just don't see it.